Monday, everybody. Happy Monday. If you are on here, hit the like button, like, share, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. Shout out to you, DOD. um, yeah, like, share, subscribe, all that different stuff. This was kind of a last minute live, so bear with me, but I did want to I did want to address a couple of things that have come up to me just regarding this whole situation with Eboni K. Williams and some key lessons or some key takeaways that I think women can and should take away from this if they are so willing. So I'm going to get into it really quickly. But again, as you guys are coming in here, like on the way. And thank you for being here also. Thank you for joining me. I know this was last minute. Thank you for hanging out with me. Happy Monday. I usually don't go live on Mondays, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. So the topic today, what Eboni K. Williams and Kimberly Foster can teach Black women about relationships. By now, I'm sure you guys have seen the last couple of days has been just full to the brim with this whole conversation around Eboni K. Williams and how she not only doubled down, but tripled down on her position towards blue collar workers, men who drive bus, and basically just working class men in general. And one of the reasons I think it has gotten a lot of support and gotten a lot of traction is because it speaks to a lot of people's experience. It speaks to the experience that many men have had when they have felt like they, you know, maybe they do have a good job. Maybe they're making the six figures. Maybe they have the height. You know, they're marriageable. They have a good background, but for whatever reason, they are not getting the time of day. So it speaks to the frustration that men get when they, quite frankly, are not given the time of day. They are not even considered as good enough, right? Because they are blue collar workers or because they have particular jobs. I shared with you guys stats earlier on a previous live or a previous video I did that showed from The Dating Divide, a book that I'm going to be reviewing hopefully within the next week or two, that is written by two sociologists, and it looks specifically at online dating patterns. And one of the findings that came out in that study was that Black women generally, especially educated Black women will specifically filter out men who do not have college degrees. This is quite common. And again, that's not to say that other races of women don't do it too. This isn't just only something that Black women do, but nevertheless, it is something that is quite common to see college-educated women specifically filter out men who do not have college degrees. And so that the video of Eboni K. Williams and her conversation with Ayanna Benzette, again, one of the reasons I think it went viral was because it speaks to a lot of the tension and a lot of the frustration and quite frankly, the dynamics that are going on today. And it's brought up questions about, you know, Black women settling, should they be made to settle? You know, it's brought up conversations about dating standards, what's average, what's not average. And so there's all this talk going around. Again, guys, like, share, subscribe on the way here. Okay, the first time catching live. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being there. This is all very, very much last minute, so bear with me. But yeah, so again, it speaks to, I think, a lot of the frustration that people actually have been feeling online, you know, or not even online, just in the dating market in general. Hence the manosphere, hence the passport bros, different red pill spaces. Just in general, we know that the dating market in the West, in America, it's very difficult. And so one of the things that I think really, well, there were a couple of things that stood out to me, but one of the things or one of the main lessons that I think women can take away from this whole situation is that education does not and will not matter as far as dating prospects, as far as improving your dating or marriageable prospects with the opposite sex. Education doesn't matter. Because what happened was when you saw the different feedback that Eboni K. Williams gave to blue collar men, or just gave to, you know, men in general, and it was very, to me, it was very disingenuous because she basically, you know, insulted blue collar men, but then tried to backtrack and act as if she was trying to encourage them. But what it came down to was, look, these men aren't on my level, right? I have this, I've been able to achieve this career-wise. I've been able to get this degree. I have been able to, you know, I'm in these circles. I'm around these high-value people. I have access to this money. Like, basically, I need men at my level. And so the reason that she was pushing for, you know, bet on Black. And she was pushing for this kind of like talented 10th elite bourgeois existence, was because she basically wanted a larger pool of men to choose from. That's really what it came down to. But one of the things that I think women don't always understand is that just because they have education or just because they have a degree does not necessarily mean that the men on that level want to date them. Another finding that came from the study that I mentioned earlier, the dating divide, was that while women will oftentimes filter, they'll filter based upon height, they will absolutely filter based upon college degree, men aren't looking at that. Men, even online, they are filtering by race, yes. They are also looking at the woman's age, and they are basically looking at her beauty. College, maybe, maybe not, but like college and education was not a primary factor for the different men of all races across the board who were looking for women. And so a lot of times when we hear these conversations, we hear women talking about men not being on their level, what they fail to understand is that most men do not care what education they have. They don't care if the woman has a GED or a PhD. They don't really care. What the biggest component for the man is, do you look good? Do I find you attractive enough to want to, you know, take you out, to want to be with you long term? Do you have a good personality? You know what I mean? Are you easy to get along with? But the degree doesn't really do it for them. And so, but I think what women don't understand, they'll go to college and they'll get these degrees, and they think that now they're automatically qualified with men in that level. And while going to college and going into having access to these different circles, yes, it will give you more access, or it will put you in those places, and it will put you in those circles where maybe more elite men are, or maybe more white collar men are. So it'll give you access to those men, but it does not necessarily mean those men are going to bite. Because at the end of the day, if you don't pass the basic metrics that men use to measure femininity, right? Their looks, how the woman looks, right? Is she agreeable? Her personality, those different things. Again, it doesn't matter if you have a GED or a PhD. That's not changing. Your education, the paper you have, your accomplishments cannot compensate for how you look. And I think that's the really difficult part about this whole conversation that's come up to me, was that educated women, the hypergamous nature of educated women dictates that they are going to now want men on their level, usually, which means education-wise, money-wise, career-wise, accomplishments-wise, whatever. They want men at or above their level, ideally. The hypergamous nature of women dictates that. They probably won't admit to it. They may say, oh, I'll date a man that makes less if he this, and that. And they'll give you all these caveats. But at the end of the day, women want to feel like the men they're with can lead them to a certain extent. They want to feel like the man they're with, they can respect. And one way that these women oftentimes are going to respect these men is based upon the level of accomplishments. Like I said, you can argue tooth and nail, but the data backs that up. But again, with that said, that does not mean just because you have those degrees necessarily means that those men are going to choose you. And again, if you don't have the looks, right, or if you don't have the personality or whatever it may be, this is where the issues can come. And again, I want to break this down a little bit more succinctly in upcoming live, or actually break down the data that came from the book, right? And it was, like I said, book written by two sociologists who look at current dating patterns, and they examine online dating patterns, and they look at the patterns, and then they also do in-person interviews. And they said they actually found that oftentimes people would answer a particular way, a way that was socially acceptable, but when they were anonymous or when people weren't actually directly talking to them, their behaviors were a lot different. Again, I'll get more into that later. But in the meantime, guys, like, share, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. Support your favorite content creators. If you like what's going on here, be sure to share support through the Cash App, Super Chat, Venmo, as always, I'll be sure to acknowledge those Super Chats. Also, okay, yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up, that education, it doesn't matter. Like, I think it's women need to understand education doesn't matter. And the reason I bring that up is because Eboni K. Williams, she came in very much leading with her accomplishments, right? We know that she was an attorney. She was, I think, Miss North Carolina at one particular time. She was a contributor on Fox News. And so she's had a successful career, for no doubt. But So as a result, I think because of that, she felt that she had the right to speak to this man in a way to try to bring them up to their level, right? To kind of pep talk them like, look, you need to get together so that you can date me. But again, what is not being talked about in that discussion, in that conversation, is all these women who are saying we need men on our level. Have you asked what those men want? And that is never, ever really brought into the conversation. It's always assumed. These women who are saying these men are not on their level, it's always assumed that these women have everything together. It's always assumed that these women already have the things that men want. And what we saw, to me, in just those few little clips that were shared, where Eboni K. Williams called herself pep talking men. What we saw was a woman who, I mean, she's very attractive, right? Even though she's getting into her 40s, she's still attractive. But the way that she addressed the men, her energy, the things that she said, the personality, right? The insults, the attitude. A PhD cannot, or an education cannot and does not make up for that. Like I said, if you don't have the looks, if you don't have the personality, an education or career cannot compensate. You can't swap it out. And that's one thing to me that really stood out on this whole thing, when there was so much conversation about what men were not doing and how men need to come up to the level of these women. So the whole conversation was around that, right? And yet, and still, there was never really a talk of, okay, well, how do we know that you're on the level? How do we know that you're a high value woman? What about you? What about what you're doing? What about what you're actually bringing to the table that makes you high value? And again, I'm not saying it's just looks or personality. There are other intrinsic values too, but I'm just talking about as far as like out the gate, right? If we can look at some of the sources that show that women tend to look at the accomplishments. They tend to look at the height of the individual, right? They tend to look at the career. Men generally will start with the looks. It's a big thing. And then maybe other shared values. I mean, if you just look at the way people filter, but looks is a big component. So when you're talking about who is or who is not on somebody's level, there was a whole laundry list of what men weren't doing, but what was not being brought up was, okay, well, how do we know that you are on the level that these men want? And just based upon her attitude alone, and based upon the way many of the men were quite offended, down to the point, I mean, when you got DJ Envy, who was known to be very, very, very soft, right? And very, very complacent. I don't want to say complacent, but a lot of people call him a simp. You know what I mean? Like, he gives a lot of freedom to women. You got him mad. You got him questioning you. And he even had a woman in the panel. I mean, when you got those people questioning you, then you already know that you've gone a little bit far. And so that's one thing to me, again, that stood out. Now, I want to bring this up real quick, this tweet, because I think this tweet summed it up pretty well. Okay, let's see. So this was sent to me. This was a tweet by, I think his name is Mr. Fantastic. And I think this kind of broke it down really well. Again, how a lot of guys were feeling. It says, no black man is mad. Actually, let me pull this up. You guys can see the same. Okay. It says, no black man is mad about Eboni K. Williams being unwilling to date a bus driver. Black men are mad that she blatantly disrespected working class black men. Yes. Wow, essing and effing white men. Keep your mouth over there for criticism like you do for pleasure. The fact that black women are praising and applauding her for statistical lies, black women buying 20% of houses in the highest housing market ever, and facts without context, more black women in college than black men, when more women of all races attend college more than men. This is just another clear example of black misandry being encouraged and black men being gaslit and trolled for calling out the BS. So I think that pretty much perfectly summed up what I was saying, right? That it's not the degree, right? It is not that these men are intimidated. It goes down to the attitude. It goes down to, and in the statements that are made, that was insulting. But another thing that I really want to highlight here is that what I think are some good key takeaways from women is education, class, socioeconomic status, career, they are not substitutes for the essentials needed in a relationship with a high value man or the kind of men that you want, right? They're no substitute for you being attractive to that man on some level, and you having a easygoing personality, or you being, easy to get along with. There's no substitute for that. It doesn't matter how many degrees, it doesn't matter what school, it doesn't matter how much money, it doesn't matter to men. They don't care. That does not intimidate them. That doesn't turn them on or off. Like for a lot of guys, that is like a non-factor. Now I know, and I'm not going to pretend there are probably some men out there, right? There, I would think few, but I'm sure there's some men out there maybe who that might be a little intimidated. But for the most part, no. The majority of men, that is a non-issue. The only time the education becomes an issue, again, is when you use it to do what Eboni K. Williams did in that situation, which is to condemn, which is to condone, and which is to basically shame other men. For you to shame them, for you to put them down, for you to act as if you are above them, for you to put yourself on a superior level, for you to put yourself on a superior, like to act as if you can hold them accountable. That is when the men care. It's not the education, it's what you do with the education. It's the disrespect. And also, by the way, it don't matter how much degrees you have. Your degrees, your money that you make, the socioeconomic class you find yourself in is no substitute for how you look to these men and your personality, period. And I think that's really important for the lovely ladies to understand. Again, your degrees, the amount of money you make, whether or not you went to Stanford or Harvard or Berkeley is in my case, right? Or whatever, right? Or you went to Oxford. You can go to the Ivy League or have a GED. That's a non-issue. It's what are you doing? How are you treating me? How are you presenting yourself? And what happens so many times is that women will put themselves in these situations where they've gotten a little money, they've gotten a little status, they've gotten some access and rubbed, elbows with some white folks. And now they're feeling themselves. And now they feel like they deserve access to the men around them. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having that desire. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wanting to marry. If you're upper middle class or upper class and you want to marry an upper class guy, there's something wrong with that. But I just think it needs to be reiterated that your degree is not what is going to qualify you for that man. It, again, goes down to your looks, goes down to your personality. Can you get along with people? And then after that, other shared values. But it's like, if you're not getting past those basic components, it doesn't matter. And a lot of times, and I know this is uncomfortable, but a lot of times what happens is that sometimes women in the pursuit of success or in the pursuit of particular jobs or whatever it may be, well, sometimes they can let themselves go, whether it be physically, or they can let themselves go as far as not necessarily developing those relationship skills. And then they get the money and they're able to get a promotion at the job. And now they have whatever it may be. And they think that hard work that they put in hours upon hours upon hours warrants them to the high value man over there, or the man over there, or the man over there. But like I said, if they're not passing the basic things, the basic femininity that a lot of men are looking at, right? Again, the looks, again, the personality. And then after that, the other shared values, it's like, it's a lot. It's a lost cause. You know what I mean? It's a lost cause. And I think, again, this was a really, really, really big issue. And I think this is one of those things that it's like, I don't know if women don't get it or they don't want to get it, or they want to believe that the way that they value men and the way that they value other people is the way that men value them. And look, and I can honestly say too, when I was younger, I thought the same way. For a time, I kind of thought like, oh, I needed to make a certain amount of money, or I needed to achieve a certain amount of things. Like I kind of fell into that delusion too. Until you talk to men, they're like, I don't really care. It's like, okay, you make more money, you make less. You're still expecting for me to pay for the dinner. You're still expecting me to take you out. So what does it even matter? Like, you know what I mean? Again, guys, if you're on here, like, share, subscribe, show support to the show, show support to your favorite content creators if you like what's going on here. Yeah, and yes, I do actually, to be fair, I do know of a couple of men who when I talked about shared values, there are men who do like women who are educated, or they just like women who are more well-read. That does happen. I know men like that. They like when they can kind of have conversations with. They can, so that does happen. But what I'm saying is, generally speaking, generally across the board, men aren't looking at that primarily, or they're not measuring the woman's value based upon her education the way women themselves will sometimes do. That's what I'm saying. And, I think the tweet here kind of summed it up, right? The tweet there kind of summed it up, where it's like, we're upset that you insulted us. You use your position, whatever position you feel like you have yourself in, whatever elite position you feel like you have yourself in, you used it as an opportunity to insult us, and then gaslit us, and then made us as if you were trying to do us a favor. Why you let up there with a white man? Like, nobody's taking that seriously. And so, if nothing else, it's important for the ladies to understand men don't care about the education. I think another thing too that is important to bring up is that if you are someone who aspires to have a white collar job, or aspires for a career that is going to require higher education, and you do want to date hypergamously, or you do want to have the standards that you're going to be with somebody on or above your level and him be Black or whatever it may be, if you do want to do that, you just have to know that it's going to be harder for you to find somebody. It's not to say that it can't happen. I'm not saying it can't, but I'm just saying, if that is a requirement that you hold, if you're a woman then and you're going for a master's, right, or a PhD, and your requirement is that the person that you end up with, the man that you end up with, must also have a master's or a PhD. And by the way, you also want him to be Black. And by the way, you also want him to be at least 6 foot, whatever, you just have to know, like, how there's only a certain amount of people, right? And you just have to know at the end of the day, that's going to shrink your dating pool. Not saying that it can't happen, but this is where too, like, I think understanding dating and mating is competitive. And I think sometimes ladies have a hard time wanting to accept the fact that they have to compete on some level. And it's not like compete, like you got to put on boxing gloves or whatever, but like competing as far as putting your best foot forward. You know what I mean? Not like, just take me as I am. You're not going to put no effort into your appearance, or not put no effort into you presenting yourself in a way that, you would want somebody to do for you. Like, you know what I mean? It's like putting yourself, but your best foot forward. But for some reason, some people feel like that in and of itself is misogyny, right? You actually going the extra mile to make sure that you are the most presentable you can be, the way that you would do at a college, or the way that you would do at a job interview, that you may want to do the same if you're trying to attract a male. Some women, that's misogyny. Some women, you should just be able to show up barefaced in some, hair undone, whatever. And like, well, actually, I know some guys like barefaced, but y'all know what I mean. Y'all get what I'm saying. So again, if you want to do the whole education thing, have at it. There's no problem. But if you want to date and mate hypergamously, yes, that is absolutely going to shrink your dating pool. This is not like a make this up. This is just the numbers, period. And again, this is the kind of frustration you start to see with the I'm going like Eboni K. Williams, right? Who now she's about to be 40. She is, successful, and she's single. And also, by the way, it's not like she's been celibate or she's been like a nun. Like, she's had access to different men. So her story is totally different, because she's an attractive woman. Like I said, she was a beauty queen early on. She was on Real Housewives. She was engaged to a CFO who was very, very wealthy. So she's had high value men. And so the reason that she hasn't married probably has more to do with the personal problem. And just based upon the different things that have come out lately about her response to Black men in particular, to different people, it probably has more to do with just interpersonal issues, right? But I'm just saying, in general, women who find themselves in her position, who are the well-off, who are the college educated, or who are making more money, and they find themselves in the upper echelon of the society, they're going to run into that issue. They're going to run into that brick wall again if they don't pass the basic test, and the education and the jobs and the careers don't compensate with that. But this is basically what Kevin Samuels said the whole time, and they hated him for it. They hated him because he was just telling them what men want. But no amount of shaming or no amount of gaslighting is ever going to change biology and heterosexuality. Like, it just is what it is, y'all. Again, guys, like, share, subscribe. If you like what's going on here. Okay. And so I wanted to say that real quick. And then, okay. And then secondly, I wanted to bring up another key issue here, obviously, is that if you are a swirler, if you're a reform swirler, nobody's taking you seriously. Like, if you are a reform swirler, you cannot think you're going to be able to have a voice or be able to have any particular sway with Black men. It's just not going to happen. It is dunzo not going to happen. And I want to share this tweet with you that I actually saw. This was sent to me a while back, and actually I meant to review it, and then life happened. But I think this is an important time to review it, because this was posted also from Miss Kimberly Nicole Foster, who you guys know is a very popular feminist. And so she posted this. This was a little last month, right? A little last month. And basically it reads, a Black woman marrying a white man is not the same as a Black man marrying a white woman. I don't know why this is even a debate. Then she goes on over here and says, this is not a debate. You know, it just really goes down to numbers, yada, yada, yada. And look, we know this is true. We also know, right, that this is pretty much across the board for all races, right? The number of women outnumber men. This is true across the board for all races. This is not just specific for the Black community and the white community, Asian, whatever. There is more women than men, generally speaking. But nevertheless, you know, she brought up this comment just like, look, a Black woman marrying a white man is not the same as a Black man marrying a white woman. It's like not even the same. And you know what? I would actually say, yes, I agree. It isn't the same. But I think where we differ is that the double standard is actually very much in favor of men generally. And here's why. At the end of the day, and while I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with this, there has been historical examples time and time again of men dating and mating or sleeping with women of other races and still building their community, i.e. the American Empire. White men have been sleeping with Black women, Native American women, Asian women, Latinas since the birth of this nation while building their empire. White men have done this. There's even popular Pan-African leaders. I was talking to my husband about this earlier today. There's like countless popular Pan-Africanist leaders within Africa, right, who ended up with Russian or Ukrainian wives because they went to college over there. They did that, came back and built their nation, right? And I mean, and this has just happened, like, if you just understand the way society has worked, right? When sometimes in different kingdoms would go and take over another kingdom, and they would take them captives, and they would keep the wives sometimes and bring them in as concubines or whatever. Like, men have always had access to a certain extent or slept with other women while still being able to maintain or build up their own particular community or their own nation. Again, I'm not saying that's necessarily ideal, but I'm saying it's very common for that to happen. So if a man decides to sleep or be with a woman of another race, that man can still go and actually build his nation. Again, all we have to do is just look at American society. If you think of the forefathers themselves, the George Washington, so sleeping with Black women, Thomas Jefferson sleeping with Black women. If you think about all of the founding fathers, every last one of them had Black slaves, Black mistresses, women that they were sleeping with as they were literally building their empire. That's just history alone. And so what happens sometimes is that I think the way this culture is, there is such this competition that goes on now where women feel like they should be able to do everything men can do as a way of trying to fight the patriarchy, right? This is kind of one of the feminist and Black feminist agenda, right? Like, wanted to try to balance the scales, wanted to give women freedom, different things of that nature. But the issue to me is that we don't have the same nature. We don't. Double standards absolutely exist. And in dating and mating, it is no different. I go back to what I said about the preferences. The different data that came out from the online study, again, that I'm going to review in a few weeks, also showed that men, not only did they have a priority for the way women looked, they also prioritized the woman's age. The youngest women tended to have the highest amount of activity, the youngest women. Whereas the men As they got older and presumably as their assets and wealth accrued and they had a stronger profile and they had more things they could show off, they had more degrees, they actually were seen as more desirable. So we see, even based upon what the things that men and women are attracted to are totally and completely different. Thank you so much for the 20. Y'all show some support. This is the first super chat. I've been going for 40 minutes, y'all. Like, share, subscribe. I know the drill. It says, funny how most women require men to make or equal or more and use their degrees as a benefit, but don't want to use those things as they don't want to have to pay significant bills after marriage. Shout out to Kevin Sam. And that's exactly what I was saying. Most men are just like, I don't really care about your money, because the expectation is still that I pay anyways, that I go get the engagement ring. Even if you're like a raging black, like, I know I have talked to feminists who have all, equality and intersectionality or whatever, and you talk about the engagement ring, and it's just like, no, he needs to buy the engagement ring. Like, no, he needs to be a nice engagement ring. Like, it just comes to certain things, and they're just like, I know you're talking about. Like, this is not up for discussion. Yes, you are buying me an engagement ring, and it's nice. No, I am not proposing. Like, this is like hardcore, radical black feminists. Like, got the shirt, like, I've talked to these kind of women, and they are all for it. But then there's just particular things where it's just like, no, we're not. This is not up for discussion. How is this even a debate? This is just what you do. You know what I mean? So yes, a prime example, most men, they're like looking at the degree and they're like, you still want me to pay. So this is why I don't really care, because at the end of the day, if we're going out, 9 times out of 10, you're looking at me to pay. I mean, unless you guys have already had some form of a conversation or agreement beforehand, the expectation is still, I pay. You know what I mean? Anyways. So again, so going back to when you want to talk about interracial relationships, which is, again, I go back to this tweet that Kimberly Nicole Foster brought up, which I thought she made a really good point. And I agree that, yes, it is different between men and women, but I just will disagree in that the double standard exists and it's in favor of men. Men can go and do that and not only build their nation, but on top of that, they can go, let's say they're with a white woman for whatever, they can go, and if they have the resources, if they have the money, if they have the prestige, even after they've been with a white woman or for some time or whatever, a black woman will still get with them. A black woman will still get with the man. If he has the resources, if they have the prestige, like, it doesn't matter. But in this particular case, one of the primary issues at black men was that she was trying to hold them accountable while she was with a white man. And in the minds of men in general, you find this in the white community, right? Or they have names for women who literally names for women who date out or who sleep with other men, especially black men. For example, like the way they culturally gatekeep, if they know a white woman has slept with a black man or previously had a history, for example, just Pearly Things, right? The way that she's kind of been canceled and the way that she has been, a lot of men and the white manosphere don't mess with her. Not only just because of things she said, but because of her past and because of the different things that she's done with black men. Like, it's a prime example. You'll see that white men will literally, in some cases, be like, I'm not messing with this woman if she has a history of being with these other men, because she's compromised. They may not say that outright. They may not blatantly say it, in public platforms, but they'll move like that. And it's the same way also, if you look in the black community, a lot of men will look at her and be like, if you've already swirled, you've already divested, you've already whatever, bye. Like, it's cool. You can go over there, do you, boo. But don't come back here after that works out with breaks down with Zaddy, and then now try to be, pull the moral authority and feel like you have the right to hold me accountable for anything. Why weren't you working out with your white man? Why weren't you working it out with Zaddy? And that's how a lot of people feel. That's how a lot of black men feel. And so the fact that Eboni K. Williams, thought that she had the right after she was laying up there with that white man for 4 years, thought that she had the right to go and hold men accountable as if they were going to take her seriously. To me, I'm like, either there is a huge disconnect or there's like some delusion and there's just a lack of understanding. But it's like, for a lot of men, a lot of black men, once you have already chosen your side, once you pass that line, they're not listening to you. They're not listening to you when anything comes to black issues. You're like a non-factor to them. You are completely a non-factor. Black women will, because a lot of them actually wish they could swirl or divest. So they'll still listen to you, and they still believe in their brain that you can sleep out and date out and marry out and still be pro-Black. I personally take the position that I think that's BS, because I believe the nature of women is to submit. They may not say it. I know Black women can be combative, you know, that's the reputation that we have, but the nature of women is to submit to whatever man that they're with. And so they're generally going to take on his politics in some way, shape, or form, because that is her role. That is her natural position within the relationship. And so I take the opinion that whoever a woman ends up being with, she's likely going to take on his politics, his perspective, his point of view, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's actually quite natural. But as a result, this is why I think there's a key difference between when a woman dates or marries out versus when a man dates or marries out. But even if you disagree with me, even if you think, nah, Chez, you're off, that's wrong, fine. The reality is a lot of Black men are not taking you seriously once you have crossed that threshold to where you are now dating, you are swirling, you divested, whatever. At that point, they no longer consider you a factor in Black issues. They don't. And the double standard is that men who do that, some of them actually will. Some of them legitimately, they will consider. Like I said, there's examples of men who have done that and gone back and actually built their nation. And so there is a double standard that exists. There are men who can date and marry out and still weigh in Black issues. And sometimes they'll still actually contribute and they'll give money. And partially that's because men are still expected to build stuff. And usually the people who build and establish stuff are the ones who set the rules. And this is why you can see and have seen men do this, of all races, by the way. Of all races, will sleep around, have side pieces, do this, do that. But at the end of the day, and sometimes even marry out, but still go back and build a nation for their people. And again, that goes back to, in my opinion, I think just the fact that we have a different nature. And so when Miss Kimberly Nicole Foster says a Black woman marrying a white man is not the same thing as a Black man marrying a white woman, I agree. I would just say the double standard in this particular point actually, I think, is more in favor of the men, generally speaking. Not that it's right, but because men are expected to build, those men who do have it in their mind that they are still going to build for their people, right? Whether it be with a Black woman on their side or not, they can do that. They may still get some pushback. They may still get some whatever. But as far as them actually having real world results that are going to tangibly impact the world, men can do that. History alone proves this out. Like I said, all we have to do is look at the American Empire. We literally look at the American Empire and look at the colonization as a whole. White supremacy as a whole was filled of leaders and white forefathers, whatever, who had all kinds of side pieces, had all kinds of women who were not white, who they slept with, even created kids with, whatever, why they were continuing to empower their empire. So that's what I'm saying. When you think about just the nature of men versus the nature of women, that's where I think it is different. And dating and marrying out for men and women, it is different. And look, if somebody does it, to me, I'm like, whatever, do your thing. As long as you're happy, I see no issue with it. But I always take the position of, if you date and marry out, especially if you're a woman and you decided to, date and marry out, that's fine. But like, you also don't need to be now setting yourself as a standard for Black empowerment. Like Miss Eboni K. Williams, no, you are not the standard. Like, you're not in a position to hold any man accountable. Because first of all, they're looking at you like, how are you trying to hold us accountable and you can't even keep a man in your life? You're talking about a community and you can't even get like basic step one right in community, which is have a family. Families make up communities. Without a family, there is no community. And so a lot of men also are going to disqualify somebody like her because in their minds are like, how are you at this age trying to hold us accountable, saying we're not doing right? And you haven't even done step one successfully, which is establish a family. And so there's that, there's that men are going to be looking at. And then, like I said, secondarily, reform swirlers, ex-swirlers, women who have a open history of being with white men, sleeping with white men, marrying, whatever. It's not to say that men may not like respect you for your career or they may not wish you any harm, but they're not going to be listening to you when it comes to Black issues. And they definitely aren't going to be looking to you to be empowered. And that's why when I saw this tweet that Ms. Kimberly Nicole Foster made, I'm like, she's absolutely right. It's not the same. I just think the double standard, in my opinion, is more in favor of Black men. And it's not because it's like, oh, because they deserve it. It's just like, because the expectations are that men would build, right? And that men do, create institutions, whatever. The ones who build set the rules. And all we have to do is look at history. History alone shows this to be true, that men will sleep around. You've had white supremacists, you've had KKK leaders with black side pieces. This is not like, I guess this is not surprising to me at all. Shout out to you, Saul T. Balls with the 20. It's a scroll of Spencer 3, for she hath proclaimed in vanity atop a pedestal her in contempt. She rebuked the honest workman. She hath condemned her room to dry, lonely voidness over myrrh to be filled. That sounds, is that a poem? Shout out to you. Thank you so much for the support. Y'all know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, you guys. So those are to me some key takeaways that I think, if nothing else, women who are just watching, observing can learn from this. That one, your education really doesn't matter at the end of the day when it comes to your marriage prospects. It might help you get into the door and get you access to more high value men, or to the kind of men that you would help to one day date or marry. But if you still don't have the basic qualities, as in the looks, right, as in the personality, and then after that, whatever values that particular man may want, if you don't hit it on those basic fundamental values, then it doesn't matter. Like your degree, your success, your money cannot and will not be able to compensate for that. And we saw that clearly in the case of Eboni K. Williams. Beautiful woman, she's about to be 40 and she's still very attractive. She still looks very fit, but she comes off as very combative, and she was very insulting. And instead of her, when she was caught on it, saying, hey, I'm sorry, you know what, I could see how that was offensive, or I'm sorry if I made you guys upset. Like, instead of her just saying I'm sorry and then moving on, she had to double and then triple down. And so already men are like, this is not a kind of woman that even if I worked hard and I came home and just wanted to rest, this isn't the kind of woman that could give me rest. This isn't the kind of woman that could give me peace. I feel like we'd always be bickering and arguing. And so, as I mentioned, the education, it can give you the kind of access to those men that you may want. It can give you into those circles, but if you're not passing on the looks component, which I know can be really hard, that can be a hard one for women, because now we're talking, this is when we get into the colorism, the featureism, the texturism, and you kind of get into that whole thing and the beauty hierarchy. And like, I get it, it's a lot of things are unfair, right? It's like all of us want to feel like we're 10s, right? But it's like, if a man's over here like, yeah, I want to feel like I'm a billionaire, we would look and laugh at him. And that's where it can kind of get tricky, because at the end of the day, we're not all 10s, and that's fine. Like, not all men are billionaires. That's fine. But we have to be able to, I think, know and understand and recognize our place. And I think once there's an acceptance of that, then you can kind of move accordingly. But unfortunately, we've kind of been told these delusions, like we're all 10s, And I think there's something wrong with feeling like a 10. You can absolutely do that, and you should. But I'm just saying, if you want a particular man and status, like if you really want status, if you really want a very whatever archetype of male that you want, they may be looking for particular things, and you're not getting in the door if you don't have the look that they want. I don't really know how else to say it. Said like, just like, not all men are billionaires, and nobody's going and patting them and saying, oh, no, it's okay. The economic hierarchy just needs to be abolished. And, like the patriarchy is just like, no one is giving the time of day. Men are going around saying we're all billionaires. We're all successful. Nobody would take that seriously. Nobody at all. Nobody would ever bat their eye, right? But women, like I said, we can say we're all 10s, and I think it's okay and good to feel comfortable. I see nothing wrong with a woman saying that she is a 10 to herself. That's fine. I'm just saying where it can become an issue is if you are like very set on wanting a very particular kind of guy. Like, you just want to know, again, what they want. And your education it cannot compensate for you being attracted to that particular man. There's just no way around it, So, and then secondly, as I mentioned before, education also, it'll definitely shrink your relationship pool. Like if you're a woman and you absolutely are going to filter and like, I'm not going with a guy unless he has a master's or a PhD or a bachelor's or whatever, totally fine. You have the right to have that expectation, but you also have to know that now it's going to be a little bit harder for you to find the kind of men that you want on your level, right? Because there's just not as many men out there who have masters, who have bachelors, who have, there's just like, the numbers aren't there. And so when you're looking at the Eboni K. Williams, right, that's a, not only is she's representing a very small percentage of Black women, just as far as money, as far as success, as far as the circles that she was in, she's representing a very small percentage of women, but that also means that she's only going to have access to a very small percentage of men. And yeah, that can lead to frustration. But like I said, if those qualities aren't there, then what's she gonna do? And at that point, it's not the fault of the men and the other class. It's not the fault of men in blue collar jobs or working class that you can't get along with men in your own class. That ain't their fault. You have to deal with yourself at that point. And that was another reason a lot of men were getting mad. They're just like, why are you hating on us just because you can't get along with men in your class? Now you're just mad that there aren't more men in the upper class. But not all men are meant to be upper class. If that was the case, then capitalism wouldn't exist. You have to have different classes. You kind of have to have a hierarchy in order for the system to work. Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You know what I mean? So there is that. Like I said, if you want to get a college education or get a college degree and date hypergamously, you could absolutely do you, boo, but you have to know that your pool of eligible daters, men, is just going to go smaller. And then it goes down to whether or not you want to compete. If you're okay to do that, if you want to make yourself marriageable. These are to me, this is like real practical stuff. But sometimes when it comes to relationships, we can really get in our fifis with this stuff. The lovely ladies can really get in their feelings, and it comes about what men aren't doing and how they're not leveling up here and not leveling up there. And then every woman always acts as if they're fine. Like there's never anything in their life that is worth changing. There's always the assumption that he's not on my level, as if you yourself have already done everything you need to do to make yourself marriageable. But let it be clear, most Black women aren't even on the level of Eboni K. Williams when it comes to a degree or success. Most Black women are actually average or below average. So them dating a blue collar worker, a working class man, would actually be hypergamous for them, would actually be on or above their level. Because by the way, there are plenty of blue collar men out there who are making six figures, who are making very good money. They may not have the class, they may not have access to certain circles, but they can get you a house and make sure that, your light bills are paid and you can be able to raise a family. So the other delusional aspect of this whole conversation is that Black women are picking back off of Eboni K. Williams like they're her. Like they got the degree. Like they were also a beauty queen. Like they have made millions or however much money that she's made. They've been contributors on Fox. They've, rubbed elbows with the Tommy Laurens of the world and the Trump support. Like they're acting like they're in her circle. They're acting like they're running in the kind of elite white circle that she's been in. Most Black women aren't doing that. Most Black women are working at Trader Joe's, okay, are working at Pack and Save as grocery store clerks. And this is no shade to them, because God bless our grocery store clerks. God bless our post office workers. God bless our truck drivers. God bless our UPS. Like we need all those people. But I'm just saying, if you're working at, Amazon in the warehouse, no shade to you, but if you're working there, don't now try to put yourself in the same position of Eboni K. Williams talking about men ain't on your level. It's like you getting a blue collar worker would actually be hypergamous for you. So that's a whole nother thing about this whole conversation. I think we need to, Black women over here acting like they're Eboni K. Williams. It's like you don't have her accolades. You probably weren't a beauty queen. Okay. You probably don't have the money. You may actually have a kid out of wedlock. And you're average. And there's something wrong with that. Like when did average become bad? You're average. So you can't be complaining the same way that she's complaining, because you getting a man, like I said, blue collar worker that's making 50, 60, 70K, 100K, like that for you, that's hypergamy. Okay. And that's another thing that a lot of times people don't want to bring up. Like they be acting like they themselves are like an Eboni K. Williams in status, in class, even in looks, even in their social circle. And it's like, you're looking at the top 10% trying to live vicariously through them, working at UPS, no shade to UPS. But at the same time, If you're working at UPS, do you really need to have the standards to be with the CFO of UPS? Really? Like if you're just, you're the one dropping off the packages, do you really need to have the standard that unless the man owns 5 UPS stores, then he's not on my level? Like, really? And that's the kind of delusion also that's going on here. You got so many women backing off of her, like, yeah, these men need to get it together. They're over there working at Pack and Save. Food for less. And look, I love food. Look, okay, I will go grocery outlet. I go to grocery outlet every week. God bless the grocery outlet. Okay. But that's what I'm saying. Like, don't be working at grocery outlet and then trying to act like you deserve a CFO. Like, what are we even talking about? And I know a lot of these conversations online are just silly. People just like to talk mess. That happens. But my point is, there's never the question of whether or not the woman actually is qualified. Like, the assumption is always that men are not on their level, but as if women have arrived, as if there's not anything or any area in the life where the woman herself can be self-reflective or change. It never comes up. Nobody asked, okay, well, Eboni, are you on the like? Are you high value? What makes you high value? What makes you the kind of woman that the kind of men that you want desires? Like, what would you have to offer? And again, those questions usually are not brought up when it's the relationship. It's the men aren't this, men aren't that, the men ain't that, the men ain't that, the men ain't that, and then you got the ladies like, yeah, these men got these dusties, and I'm just gonna go divest and marry out, as if these men of other races even want you like that. I said that before. It's like the numbers just aren't there. We can talk about all this data. We can talk about all this, we're going to divest. We're going to expand our options. Expand your options to who? White men aren't marrying you like that. Asian men aren't wearing you like that. You're the same woman complaining about white supremacy, thinking a white man's going to now marry you? Like, what in the heck? Yeah, he'll sleep with you. Yeah, he will have you as a side piece. But very few, like Eboni K. Williams, yes, she got proposed to, a white man proposed to her. They were supposed to get engaged. Again, she's a rarity. She's had a lot of experiences that your average Black woman will never have. But by and large, the numbers are not there. I'm going to break this down again coming up, but the numbers are not there when you're looking at interracial relationships. They're just not. And so a lot of times Black women, like, they'll try to pull this card too as a way to try to like threaten Black men. Like, if you don't get it together, I'm going to date out. It's like, well, date out to who? Brad don't want you like that. Brad wants his women. He maybe will sleep with you, but he will filter you out. You're not even coming up. He is filtering you out. Online dating. You're not even coming up on his feed. He's saying, nope, no Blacks, uncheck. Nope. You're not even coming up on his feed. So I'm like, who are you? And this is the kind of stuff, to me, it gets to me not because I'm upset at people who date and marry out. Like I said, I got family members, some of my best friends are in interracial relationships, and they're beautiful. So I'm like, but I also recognize that there are exceptions to the rule, and I also recognize the kind of society that we still live in. And to me, another thing that really came out about this whole situation was how I think what you'll find is a lot of women using this negative rhetoric, basically shaming Black men for issues that, quite frankly, exist in other communities. Just to start there. But shaming Black men for issues that exist very much in other communities as a justification to date and marry out. That's really what's going on. And that's where it gets real old. It says Chez, Chardé, Eboni K. Williams will not follow a godly blue-collar man. She has never been married, and her attitude shows she is not a man's piece. Well, that's what I'm saying. When you're going for the wrong thing, to me, going just for status is not the right reason to marry him. This is my personal opinion. If you're really all about that status life, like, it's very old, in my opinion. So if you're just about status and he can take me to this ball, that ball, like, that's not going to last no way anyways. And truthfully, you dodged the bullet. Nevertheless, if that's your dating standards, that's fine. But at that point, it's like, they're going to be judging you just the same way. And what Kevin Samuel says is like, that's when the size 2 and the size 4 comes in. That's when the feminine friendly comes in. It's like, if you're going to be leading based upon those carnal, those fleshly, or those arbitrary expectations, he has to have this degree, he has to own the bus, he has to have this investment, that investment. If that's going to be the criteria, then you have to meet the criteria also, as far as the looks, as far as the attitude, as far as and that's where the silence comes in. But another thing you saw with Eboni K. Williams, And I think Eboni Nicole Foster was alluding to this, right? Alluding to this as far as like, oh, there's not enough numbers, there's not enough this. We've all heard that Black men are gay, they're snow bunnied, they're in prison. We've all heard whatever the rhetoric is, right? We've heard that as reason for these women to date out and expand their options to men who don't really want them. And I hate to, it's like I don't like being harsh. I don't consider myself a harsh person, but it's like some of this rhetoric is so detrimental because we're putting ourselves in situations to fail and not being honest about what's going on. Even for the percentage of white men who are open to Black women, white men also generally prefer women that are fit, and Black women, by and large, right now, we're not necessarily in a healthiest state. So that alone, even if you are like, okay, well, expand your options, I'm going to get me a bride or whatever. The women who can actually effectively do that are most likely going to look like an Eboni K. Williams because she's fit. Now, some of you guys can, talk about the colors and features and textures, and if that's really an issue, you really think the men who are responsible for that system are now going to prioritize you over their women? This is why this stuff never makes any sense to me, right? So one more thing I want to bring up, and then I think I want break this down. You guys, while you're on here, like, share, subscribe, show support to your favorite content creators if you like what is going on. I want to bring up this video. I think actually does a really good job of breaking this down. Oops, what's going on? I had him in y'all seen it. I had him in the thumbnail. I thought it was pretty funny. And I'm like, look, when you got DJ Envy and Dr. Umar checking Black women, y'all already know y'all did something wrong because these dudes are lightweight. These dudes are lightweight. So you already know when they're mad, when they're over there checking Black women, you done something wrong. And then when you got other Black women, because listen, other Black women were checking Eboni in that interview. They were like, man, since I rock with you, but I don't know. Like, that's when you know. When you got the men who are the most likely to ride or die with you no matter what. The men who are the most likely to, some people say DJ Envy, I haven't listened up to enough, but they say DJ Envy panders to women. They say Dr. Umar panders to women. I haven't listened to both of them enough to really know. But when you have men who have the reputation of being the panderers to women, when you have them speaking out against you, that's when you did something wrong. When you got other Black women who rock with other Black women checking you, that's when you know you went too far. You know what I mean? But anyways, I want to bring this up real quick because I think Dr. Umar also kind of wraps up what a lot of y'all was saying.
I have actually been a customer of BetterHelp for a little over 2 years now, and I was able to get matched up with a therapist.
I saw that sister on the Breakfast Club this morning. What's her name? Erica K. Williams. What's the sister who was on there with Charlemagne and Envy today? Very well-spoken sister. What's her name? I seen her. What's the sister's name, brothers and sisters? Eboni K. Williams. Well-spoken sister. She made some great points, but dear Eboni, that's not what you was talking, sweetheart. That's not what you was talking. You was on some talented bullshit, and you tried to take it back to the community this morning, sister. See, we can't talk out both sides of our mouth. We can't talk out both sides of our mouth, sister. We can't talk out both sides of our mouth. I didn't disagree with much of what you said today, but that's not what you said the other day, sister. You was talking down to working class Blacks. You are a bourgeoisie. You are a bourgeoisie feminist, and I hope to God you wasn't engaged to no white man, because I thought somebody said you was engaged to a white man. Eboni, I better not find out your ass was swimming in the milk. If I find out your ass was swimming in the milk, I'm going to lose a lot of respect for you, sister. Because what that tells me, if you were with a damn Neanderthal snow puppy, then you're telling me at the end of the day, you are trying to condemn Black men to justify dating white.
So, bingo. That's the part I wanted to get to. I mean, just overlook any of the pejoratives that he made. Y'all know I try not to bash people like that. But the bigger point of basically, you'll hear a lot of this rhetoric of men aren't doing this. There's a whole laundry list of why Black women need to basically expand their options because Black men aren't on their level, right? And because at the end of the day, the best thing they can do is just date and marry out. So it really all comes down to justification. on why they can date and marry out. I wish they would just say, look, I have a preference for white men. This is one thing I can say that I actually appreciate about divestors. The one thing I can say I appreciate about is that they are open with their thirst for white men. There's nothing else I agree with them, but at least they're honest about that. But it's like all this rhetoric and all this explanation as to why you have a preference for white men. It's just like, can you just say that that's what you want? You want an upper middle class white man, or you want a rich man, or whatever. Like, just say that. But you don't have to now come up with this bogus, black, esoteric, spiritual black power reason to basically insult an entire class of men as a way to justify your preference for somebody who's rich or white. It's like, just be honest. Just say, my preference is this. And so I thought what he said, it was like, it summed it up perfectly. It's like, not only are men upset that like you insulted them, it's like, it's all cat, because you care so much about the excellence of black men that you wouldn't even marry one, or you want a relationship with one. No, I think she was early one, briefly married to one that dissolved quickly, if I'm not mistaken. But nevertheless, you cared about them so much that you weren't in a relationship with one, that you walk around for 4 years with a white man. Really? Like, and you really think that you're about to come over here and try to hold black men accountable when you already had your high value man that you walked off and left because he decided to stay with his kids? Like, no man in the right mind is taking that seriously. And this is why we know it's cap, right? Because it's like, when it now comes to, okay, let's just assume everything Eboni K. Williams said was true, right? About men not being on their level. Men need to do better. Black men need, instead of driving the bus, they need to own the bus. Instead of being blue collar, they need to be white collar, whatever. Let's just assume everything she says is true. How do we know that you're now the kind of woman that these men would want, right? How do you know that you're the kind of woman that these elite men would want? And the fact that she hasn't been able to secure a successful relationship with a man in her class over the last 4 decades is what men are going to look like and be like, we're not taking you seriously. This is all a grift. But then the need to blame men for your relationship ills is where the issue comes in. And that's actually what I appreciated about the initial conversation she had with Ayanna, where she was talking about the men and this and that. And then Ayanna, she turned around and she's like, well, what would you do? And so it was like, wow, this is a great moment of self-reflection. But then that kind of spiraled into this whole other, her doubling down and tripling down. And here we are today. But yeah, and as I said before, if the ultimatum for these elite women that say men aren't on their level, black men are on the level, is from the date and marry out, the problem is you have to expand your options to men who actually have shown that they want you. And unfortunately, other races of men in American society have made it very clear that you're not necessarily their preference. I don't know how else to say that nice. Like, it's like, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to tear anybody down, but it's like the numbers just aren't there. And then, like I said, I'm going to break this down clearly with receipts. So you'll see that I'm not making this stuff up. You had 2 white women, 2 white sociologists who have, they have no incentive to lie to anybody about this stuff, right? And they were sitting down and being like, oh yeah, wow. Basically, they were like, yeah, these white men are kind of racist. The argument was like, wow, they don't really want these women. They actually see black women as kind of bottom of the barrel. Like, these are 2 white women. They have no incentive to lie on their own men, right? These are 2 white women who are blatantly saying, yeah, like the preferences of these men over and over again show that black femininity, the perceptions around black femininity are still very negative. And so for those women who think that they're going to threaten black men by dating and marrying out, will soon find that they'll just have a hard time doing it. And again, you're going to have the exceptions. Eboni K. Williams, she's an attractive woman, right? She was running in the circle, Trump supporter. She was a contributor on Fox News. Some people may call her a preference. She's a lighter skin, whatever it may be. So a woman like her is going to be a rarity as far as getting a man, a high value white man at that, to be able to get to where he'd actually be willing to marry her. They didn't marry, but they got engaged, right? And so that's the thing. For those, first of all, you have a lot of white men out there who just, you're not even in the conversation. And then for those where you might be a consideration, there's still the different strict standards that you might have to go through, i.e. your weight. Weight is a big deal. More so in the white community than the black community. That's a whole other thing. And this is the cold part. Black feminists know, a lot of them know this. A lot of them will say the beauty standard is patriarchy. It is a byproduct of white patriarchy. Black feminists will literally say this. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them are the same ones they'll kind of teeter-totter into the divester rhetoric. They won't say it, right? Because divestors and black men, they beef. But sometimes they kind of share similar ideologies, right? So black feminists acknowledge that, yes, the current beauty standards are certainly based upon a Eurocentric standard. Some of the weight components, to argue, being one of them, but also it's not uncommon to find black feminists, or if they don't openly say that they're black feminists, they will use black feminist rhetoric as a reason to justify their desire to date and marry out, while not understanding that they're more likely to hit a brick wall with white men or men of other races who have already shown through evidence that they're not into you like that. They'll sleep with you, yes, but sexual access is not marital access. Something that sometimes it's like it does not compute, or either it does compute and they just don't want to deal with it, right? Because I think what goes on truthfully is that there's a bit of escapism, right? Where it's like, I don't want to have to deal with the mess that I find myself in. I don't want to have to deal with the trauma that I feel associated with the black community. I feel exasperated. I feel frustrated with the black community. And so something about expanding my options or divesting or whatever gives me some hope, gives me a sense of well-being, makes me feel happy, it makes me feel like I could have a chance of life. And so I think that there's some women who hold on to that idea because it's the only hope that they have. But it's a false hope, because a lot of times it's based upon lies. It's based upon things that aren't even fully true about the black community, about the black men, or if they are true, they're taken without a context. And then they overlook the reality of what it would mean to actually date and marry or try to integrate into a non-white relationship. You know what I mean? Shout out to you, OMAP with the 10. It says, why would Chad or Brad or Tyrone marry a woman that is 39, old, versus marrying a younger woman with less mileage and emotional damage? Even still, she could not close the deal and get married. Yeah, they started, from what I understand, it ended back in 2019 during the pandemic. And they'd been dating for 4 years. So they probably met when she was, in her 30s, and he was older. She was in her 30s. I think he was in her 50s. So there was a couple of year difference, And listen, I know personally, like, not every... everyone's different. Like, we generally know men tend to be attracted to women who are younger, right? But for example, I know of a man personally who, I think he's 64, and he married somebody younger, but she was in her 40s. She was younger than him, right? But she was still in her 40s. So it's like age gap, but also like as a 40-year-old woman, it's like at that point you're a grown woman. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't think everybody's looking for like a teen, a just out of high school and in college kind of scenario. Like, there are plenty of men that I know who are like, nah, younger's cool, but like, she doesn't have to be like a Gen Zer, yeah. And so I know some of you guys are kind of late. If you guys are here, also like, share, subscribe. That's what I said before. Black women at the end of the day don't want Black women. A lot of times they don't want reformed swirlers, and they definitely are not going to be looking at you as far as the standard on being pro-Black or the standard of betting on Black. You at that point are not in the conversation when it comes to trying to do anything related to the Black community. You're like a non-factor at that point. And this is how men think. Women need to know they don't care about your education. It's primarily your looks, and then your personality, and then after that, shared values, right? That's it. That the education is not a component. Also, for you as a woman, if you want to date and make hypergamously, obviously, if you get more career, if you get a higher degree, your hypergamous ideals are going to be harder to achieve, just simply because the numbers are not there. That's not to say that you can't do it, but you just have to know the pool is going to shrink a bit. And also, are you willing to compete to get the men that you want? I'm not saying compete like you got to put in your boxing gloves, but making sure that you are the best woman possible, making yourself marriageable. Are you willing to do that? Because college does not teach you how to be marriageable. It teaches you maybe how to think, or it teaches you how to work for a business and a corporation, but it does not give you the skills necessary to know how to get along with a man. So if you want to date and marry hypergamously and you're going and getting degrees, you better make sure that you are still also doing whatever you need to do to gain the skills necessary to be a wife, because you're not learning that in college. You're not. You're getting that at home. You're getting that maybe at a church or different women in your family or whatever. But you want to make sure that you are working on that simultaneously, because apart from that, even if you have the degree, you being in those upper class spaces and having access to upper elite men does not necessarily mean that they're going to see you as wife material, because if you haven't worked on those skills, it doesn't matter. And then last, if you are a reformed swirler, Black men aren't taking you seriously. You at that point, in most instances, have no seat at the table. It's not to say that they will necessarily hate you, right? It's not to say that they will wish you harm. But as far as Black issues, Black causes, trying to set the standard or trying to be any thought leader, you're no longer even in the conversation. They don't even consider you. Men, a lot of men think this way. I'm not saying this is, wrong or right, whatever. I'm just saying this is how a lot of them think. And yeah, there is a bit of a double standard. As I mentioned earlier before, you have scores and scores of accounts of men of all races who have slept out, had side pieces, had women of different races, of different ethnicities, while they were at the same time simultaneously building their own empire. Case in point, look at American society. All the forefathers had Black women that they were sleeping with or raping. All of them. Christopher Columbus, you want to use that? He came over here and was doing things with the native women, you know what I mean? While he was simultaneously expanding the empire that he's represented. And so I think there is a double standard, because men can do that, but then will still build, and they're expected to build. Women, in my opinion, have because we have the nature, and it is our role, I believe, to be the helpmeet and to be the support of the man. We're generally going to submit to whatever politics of the man that we're with. We're generally going to submit to it. So this is why I don't think it is the same when Black women marry out versus when white men marry out. When you want to talk about community building, it's, in my opinion, it's different, because the nature of the woman is to submit to the man as far as their politics, as far as vision. So it's just not the same. So yeah, as I said, reform swirler. Yeah, I said nobody is taking, Black men as a collective are not taking a reform swirler seriously when it comes to anything pro-Black. Not that they're going to wish harm on you, but you're not going to have the leverage, and you're not going to have the respect to go back and then now think that you can come back into the Black community and hold these men accountable, when they're just like, why couldn't you stay together with your white man? Why are you over here worried about us? Why don't you go integrate into the white community you just chose? That's what they're thinking in their brain. So it's like hopefully women will understand that. You know what I mean? Again, guys, like, share, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. I think I got it all. I think I got all my points. Let me see. Yeah, I think I got all my points. So yeah, so that's really it, guys. I this one was going to be more chill, but I just wanted to break down, I think, a couple of lessons that I think women hopefully can and will learn from this scenario, instead of getting caught up in the whole gender divide and the gender war, which to me is just a reason to get people to click or to keep the conversation going. There are some real life lessons that can be learned from this. And I hope women do take notes, right? Education doesn't matter. As I mentioned before, education does not matter. If you don't hit the feminine friendly, it don't matter if you have access to high value white collar men. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not marriageable, if you're not attractive to them, if you don't have whatever shared values, if you have not shown that you can still be a support in one way, shape or form, it don't matter. It doesn't matter. Your degree is absolutely no substitute for having marriageable qualities, period. And I'm like, I hope women understand, get that in their head. And also, it is not the fault of the men and the class below you that you don't have relationship success. If you're a white collar woman who wants white collar men, it is not the fault of blue collar men that you can't find somebody on your level. That's another thing. It's like at a certain point, you can be self-reflective and be like, okay, what's going on? And that's what I hope to inspire some self-reflection, right? And then, as I mentioned, if you do want to date hypergamously, it's just going to be harder. Not to say you can't find the guy, you absolutely can. It's just going to be harder. Now, the good news is if you are marriageable, because in my opinion, there's such an attack against marriages, and there's such an attack against being a woman who wants to be married. Like the fact that terms like pick me are pejoratives, the fact that terms like being male identified, like that's a bad thing. I'm like, of course I want to be male identified. I'm married. I want to be able to identify with the man I'm married to. So it's like the fact that these terms to me that actually connote some form of connection and understanding of the opposite sex are seen as insults and pejoratives to me are kind of crazy. But that just to me speaks because of some of the delusion that's going on. So if it's like I said, if you are a white collar woman, but you are marriageable, or you still exude the qualities or make it a point to become that and to take care of yourself, right? Then you have an upper hand, because a lot of these women don't. A lot of these women, they get their college degrees and think that makes them a wife. They get a piece of paper, they go to whatever college, Ivy League school, whatever, and think that makes them marriageable. And it's like, no, you go to college to learn how to be a good worker, how to work well for a boss, right? Be under a manager. You go to college to learn how to work. You don't go to college to learn how to be a wife. That's something that you have to learn elsewhere, right? And then lastly, like I said, reformed swirlers, no Black man is ever taken seriously. Once you have passed that point, many of them will see you as no longer a factor in Black conversations. Not to say that they wish you any harm, not to say that you don't have any value as a human being, but they're just not looking at you as you're part of the community, you're part of whatever discussions is going on here. They're not looking at you for really anything. So you at that point have no clout really, and no authority to come back and to try to hold them accountable for anything. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to take you seriously. And yes, there is a double standard. As I mentioned before, men have historically slept with women of different races like forever, right? And while still building their empire. And because men are expected to build, to a certain extent, they kind of set the rule. I don't hate to say it, but it's like they're expected to build. So they kind of set the rules for some of these different things. And men and women are looking for different things, right? In relationships, they are. So yeah. So like I said, most of them just aren't. And I think that's one thing Eboni K. Williams missed. It's like, man, I think maybe if she was currently in a relationship with a Black man, then she could get by that, but she's not. I think the fact that she's not is like, no, you're not. You're talking about you believe in the greatness of Black men so much so that you wasn't even engaged in one. Imagine that. So anyways, and this isn't just Black men, like racism we'll do this, period. I use the example of Miss Pearly Things, right? And there's talks on like 4chan and different things about white men have been very vocal about their dislike for her for many reasons. And for some of them, it's because of her history with sleeping with Black men. I'm not saying all of them, but that is certainly, like, if her goal was to really get a large white male audience base, she totally undermined any possibility of doing that for the simple fact that she slept with Black men and been open about it. This is what white men have said. So I'm using an example as to say that there's men in general who move this way. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's wrong. I'm not a man. I'm just saying this is just how they think, so do with it what you may, especially if you call yourself wanting to do anything in the build of the Black community. It's just something to know. Anyways, I think that's what I got, you guys. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. If you like what I'm doing here, one of the best things you can do is support. Like I said, CASHAPP, VENMO is always appreciated. Be sure to support your favorite content creators. Y'all is rough out here in these streets. And then also get the word out there. Get the word out there. Share this with anybody that you think may find it useful. I want to make sure that I got everything else. Let me see. Yeah, okay, guys, I think that's what I got. So be sure to like this on the way out. Show some love, CASHAPP, VENMO, CHezCharde, and stay tuned for other upcoming content. Also, guys, if you didn't know, I did start my Patreon where I'm going to be sharing exclusive content. So be sure to go over there and check it out. The thought there is to share things that I just, quite frankly, can't share over here. I had a few little issues a month or two ago with some videos of mine that were just, for whatever reason, flagged. God knows why. I don't think I'm a very controversial person, but evidently I am when it comes to certain topics. So the thought of YouTube is there's going to be some tiers there where I deal with content that is just too much for this. I have some of my content that was banned on this platform or was taken down for supposedly violating some form of rules. So that is going to be my Patreon. And then also I'm going to be doing other reviews of things that I just are a little bit too much for this platform. So be sure to check out my Patreon. I also do hair stuff there for anybody who's interested. Right now, my hair is in process. Hence why I have my my head wrap. But that'll be a good place there for that. So yeah, check out my Patreon. Would love to have you guys there. Would love to talk. Also be a great time to have a little bit more one-on-one connection. So yeah, be sure to check that out. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified each time I go live. And I'm trying to think if I have anything else on here. He never went out with this way to chat. Yeah, I'm just looking at the comments. So yeah, this is what I got. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and we'll talk later, okay?